everyone. I thought I'd do a quick tutorial, which I've been promising to do for a while, on doing some face variations. And you can sort of see that I've done a few here with this particular face here. Oh no, all that kind of funky stuff. Now the trick to doing this kind of thing is, I'm just starting off with a base face for this that I've sketched up, and what I'm actually doing is I'm duplicating elements and then blending them in. So this is kind of more of a painterly style, but it's going to work for pretty much every other style for that. Now, one of the other things I will have up for you guys as well is, let's bring this up here, is a chart which shows some of the facial expressions and some examples of that. So if you do remember, a lot of animators will actually also check a mirror for getting facial expressions, happy, angry, sad, all the rest of it. So look out for that as well. So I'm going to start off with this base face here and go through the steps that I basically did for making these facial expressions. So I'm actually going to duplicate that and take it outside of this folder, so you can sort of see it from beginning to end. So first things first, let's maybe do a variation on the mouth. So I'm just going to grab myself a freeform lasso tool, and I'm just going to grab a big selection of that mouth. I add a little bit more, and then I'm going to duplicate that. Now the shortcut for copying paste in place is Command or Control J. So that's going to copy and paste in the words in place. So it does an exact copy. What you will find sometimes, if you don't do that, if you do just a standard copy and paste, Control C, Control V, it will copy and paste it, but then it'll start jumping it every now and again. So you do really want to make sure it's in the exact location. So Command or Control J for jump. Okay, so there's my mouth variation, and what I can actually do now is I can start either painting over that, or I might want to do a manipulation to it. So as far as manipulation goes, there's a few ways of doing that. If you go Control T to transform, right click and go into warp, this is now going to allow us to start warping this around. Now the warp controls have changed slightly with the new version, but you can still get a little bit of variation on that, and you can start getting some different phenomes for that. Another one that you might want to try is go to edit, and on file, edit, puppet warp, brings up a puppet warp mesh. I'm actually going to hide the mesh, and I'm just going to drop in some points here, and let's make sure we pin down the edges, otherwise it's going to warp the whole thing. And I can start manipulate it. It's going to yell at me if I don't actually click in the right place, and I can start moving those around accordingly. So we can get sort of a little bit of movement. That's going to help with that. And that's pretty weird, but it's it could work for us. Couple other things is just do an overall paint over. So I'm trying to remember what brush I use for this. Let's try hard round opacity and flow, and do a paint over. So I'm going to use a similar kind of brush and just use the Alt key and select the surrounding colors. So my color on my palette, when I redraw this, is going to match up, and then I can try and redraw accordingly to how that is, and and try and fill that out. So that is relatively, can be quite time consuming in a way, but this way you do have more of an absolute control over this, and particularly when we're doing stuff like Big Smile, where I've actually changed the shape of the face and redrawn the teeth in. So I've moved the jaw up accordingly. And when we are doing stuff like this, the reason why I have put some brow variations in here as well, is that we are going to have some variations to that as well. Um, Other key thing to try and remember as well is to blend this stuff in. So I'm going to just add a color to this just so we can sort of see where it is, just to give you an idea. So that's actually the entire layer here, and when you really start manipulating this towards the edges, it can get a little bit funky. So quick and easy hack for this is grab your eraser, E for eraser, and select something like a soft round pressure opacity, and you can just start blending in the bits that you don't want to be made visible. So you don't need to do the color overlay, you should notice the difference, and as I toggle that on and off, you can sort of see the variation there. Alright, other thing to do as well, so other option that we can try for this is in Liquify. So in order for Liquify to work, I do need to get a copy of my original face because it is going to be destructive. So I've just done a copy here. I'm going to go up to Filter and to Liquify. This is going to open up in a new screen, and this is going to allow us, on the left here we've got a bunch of tools. This is going to allow us to start pushing our character around, and also if you look on here on the right of the panel, we also have a face aware liquify, and this is going to allow us to, if your character is looking relatively humanoid, Photoshop will, and particularly front facing, it will have a good recognition of those face features and stuff like that. So you can link these if you're doing stuff like the eye tilt. I actually have got the eyes closed in this, but you can sort of see how it works from there. You can also play around with the nose a little bit, and you can also play around with the lips and the smile and stuff like that. So it's a nice little subtle variation. It's typically designed for photos and stuff like that, so it doesn't try to make it too over the top, but it's a good start. It allows us to do some basic options there, and then we can also go in manually, and I'm just going to slide this up to the top. We do have some options on our brush here as well. I'm just going to zoom in real quick and adjust my brush size just as we would a normal brush, and you can see we can sort of start pushing things around for our character. And we can maybe do some variations like that. A couple other tools with this, just in our toolbar here. This is just our general nudge tool. There is a reconstruct tool to get the brush to a relatively good size, and this just repairs anything that we've done back to normal. This one here is the smooth tool. It's a little bit, it just softens the edges a bit. Twirl tool could come in handy, but just got to get my brush size down. Basically allows you to twirl your object. Actually kind of looks kind of cool. And if you press Alt, it will twirl in the opposite direction. The big one for this would be, playing around with the mouth and stuff like that. You could, you can get sort of a weird expression like that. Pucker and bloat tool, they are either going to contract, or the bloat tool is going to do the opposite, but if you press Alt, it's going to toggle between the two of those anyway, so you can pucker or bloat there. I'm just going to jump to the reconstruct tool and see if I can rebuild all of that. Push left tool does literally that. As you drag it in a particular direction, it's going to push everything to the left of screen. So you can get some pretty funky things happening with that, as you can see. And then also, if you look below that, we've got a mask tool and a Thor tool. So Thor's going to allow you to get rid of the mask. So to give you an idea, I can paint in my mask. So I'm using the mouse for that. Let's change it over to that, and I can grab all of that. So when I do some manipulation, it's only going to affect the areas that don't have the mask on them. So this neck is just left as is in this particular case. If I want to get rid of that, I can go to the Thaw tool and I can clean up my mask like that. Besides that, we've got our face option, which is over here on the right anyway. And once you've done that and you're happy with it, it's just going to be a matter of hitting apply, and there it is there. As I mentioned, it is destructive, so make sure you've got a backup of the face that you're doing right there. The, the the big one, as usual, is do check your references, whether or not you get a mirror or something like that. Um, you know, or check out some examples of facial expressions. So you can sort of see here's the different facial expressions I've done again, and as a reminder, these are just sort of I've copied and pasted sections. I've done some duplicates of the face as well, but some of it's just duplicate, and I should have blended them in a bit more, but the technique kind of works for a lot of different things. So it's mainly just being aware of copying out the areas that you need to manipulate if it's going to be something specific, or do a duplicate of the head and move it across, and then maybe start playing around with um, you know transformation of sections and all that kind of stuff. So if it is a single object, you might even be able to jump in and go edit, puppet warp, and there's our mesh, but start pinning down areas, and you might be able to get something funky happening. Not usually the technique I'd use. Quite often use a paint over, and then you can start moving stuff around for that. This is going to it can get a little bit weird, so do be prepared to paint over as required once you've applied this sort of thing. So there's that guy there, and then I can jump in with my brush and do any fix-ups that I need to do from there. So have a play around with that. Do check the examples and stuff like that might help apply for that, so you can get all your variations, and you can sort of have some fun with that. Yeah, so transformation tools, warp tools, so edit, puppet warp, and also don't forget in the filter gallery I should have a layer on so it actually works. So edit, transform, distort's a great one for doing geometric stuff. Warp's pretty good because it brings up a mesh. Also puppet warp is going to allow us to put in a mesh over things and allow it to manipulate that way. Other than that, go to filter, let's apply that. Filter, liquify into the liquify option. Do paint overs, whatever's required to try and get your faces done. All right.